So Leviticus chapter 14 is all about cleansing, the ritual of cleansing that's important for a person to go through after they have had leprosy. Now, you may never have thought of the book of Leviticus this way, or how we are to deal with leprosy according to Leviticus chapter 14, but it's really a public health message. Just like we've been hearing public health messages throughout the COVID-19 pandemic about what are the measures, the practices, the steps that we can take to try to prevent the spread of disease, Leviticus chapter 14 is basically doing the same thing, only it's doing it with regard to leprosy for people who had far less understanding about disease and epidemiology than we have today. So in chapter 14, we hear about the purification of not only lepers, but of their living spaces. And in verse 8 it says, "The one who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes and shave off all his hair and bathe himself in water, and he shall be clean. After that he shall come into the camp, but shall live outside his tent 7 days." Can you hear the public health practices and the wisdom behind these instructions? The whole idea of cleansing completely, washing from head to toe, shaving the hair to get anything out of there that could have been disease carrying or causing, and then even the self-quarantining of you can go back basically and be with your family, but you're not going into the tent for another week to make sure there's no symptoms and that nothing is manifesting itself. You know, sometimes with a book like Leviticus or a disease like leprosy, which was an issue way back then all the way through Jesus' time. And we know there are several stories of Jesus interacting with lepers. And we may recall especially the 10 lepers who Jesus cleanses in Luke's gospel, and that only one returns to give thanks, and that one was a Samaritan. And we can often be harsh towards these lepers or people for not being grateful, or people can wonder, why is the Bible so hard on lepers? Why did they have to go outside the camp? Why did they have to be separate from their families? Why were they feared so much? Well, for people who didn't understand how diseases were transmitted, these were actually protections for the community. Here we are, all these years later, living through a pandemic, and we can still see how public health measures, things like washing our hands frequently, bathing, being careful to maintain distance, and even quarantining, these ancient biblical practices are still being used for the health and the safety of our communities.